Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Uncommon Sense. A special warm welcome to those of you who are tuning in for the first time. We hope you will continue to do so and become part of our Uncommon Sense family. This is a show about real people and real life as it's lived in the beginning of the 21st century. My guests share what they've learned in life with us, their wisdom and their experience. With me today is Bright Sheng, a composer, a conductor, and the Leonard Bernstein Distinguished Professor of Music, Distinguished University Professor of Music at the University of Michigan. So welcome, Bright. You know, you've had a very unusual life, perhaps more than any guest I've ever interviewed. What was it like in the times you were born and raised in China?
When I was born, and actually at the time was quite normal childhood. You know, my family was a middle class family. We had a piano at home, and my parents were intellectuals, and so were my grandparents. But a lot of history I didn't know until later, that how my grandfather was actually a big landlord in the suburb of Shanghai, and he was educated here in the United States. He got his master's degree of electrical engineering from University of Wisconsin in Madison, and went back and worked as an engineer, but he also did investment and opened shops and so forth. So after 1949, when the communists took over China, what they at the beginning they were allowed, my grandparents were allowed to take some profits from the old shops that was taken away by the government, but gradually that was stopped. But the worst time came during the Cultural Revolution. That's when I started to realize my family was actually the enemy of the state.
What was the beginning of the Cultural Revolution? How did your family experience that personally?
Well, the Cultural Revolution was actually, now I learned, was a political rivalry between, at the highest level of the Communist Party, between Mao and one of his rivalries. But in order to regain power, Mao had to start completely destroy the whole government system. So everything before that worked was supposed to be bad, and he started by going to sending the Red Guards to people's house, and our house was lived with Red Guards for 2 weeks. So everything was turned upside down.
The Red Guards lived with you?
Well, they lived in the house, yeah, search for, you know, supposed to be bad things, but there's nothing, you know, they took away everything, you know, including the piano and everything. So, you know, and were beaten. My parents, my grandparents were beaten. I was beat up by kids because I was a little enemy anybody can beat. So it was difficult. But later I learned my situation wasn't unique. It was one of the thousands of people and millions of people who suffered during the Cultural Revolution. Ultimately, I think the Cultural Revolution was a bad experience even for those people who were successful during the time. I think they were the victim, like the Red Guards. At the beginning, Mao used them to gain power. And once he achieved that, and these young high school and college students were sent to countryside to be farmers. So they were used, but that generation actually was the lost generation, so to speak, because they never had a proper education. And by the time China went through political reform after Mao, after the Cultural Revolution, these were the people that didn't have any skills.